I'm Karen Brown. Welcome to another episode of Don't Lecture Me. I'm here with author Ace Atkins, out with his brand new book, Infamous, about Machine Gun Kelley. All right, first of all, tell us, why Machine Gun Kelley? He does have Mississippi ties. Is that part of it?
It was an attractive project for me, especially after working on a book that was based in San Francisco, because Kelley was from Memphis, his wife was from Saltillo, and during his great escape, after he pulled off this major kidnapping in 1933, he actually passed through Mississippi, going through Hattiesburg, coming through Jackson, making his way up to Memphis. And so I felt I really knew these characters, and it was something I could research close to home. And really, Machine Gun Kelley is the South's only famous gangster. And so I really wanted to write something about him, and he was a character that really had never been explored enough, I think.
The only thing I know about Machine Gun Kelley in Mississippi is that he went to MSU and his best grade was in personal hygiene. That was among trivia I was
That's
reading.
a true story. Back when it was Mississippi A&M, he attended one semester, and he had okay, decent grades, but his best grade apparently was in personal hygiene. So that we do know, Machine Gun Kelley was a very clean man.
All right, his name was not really Machine Gun Kelley. It wasn't even Kelley, was it?
No, his real name was Barnes. His real name was George Barnes, but of course Machine Gun Kelley sounds a lot better. Kelley was his mother's maiden name, and it was something that I think that if he had just been the bank robber George Barnes, we probably would not be sitting right here and talking about him now. But Machine Gun Kelley is what made the image and made him famous.
And his wife, who plays a huge role in your book, was quite a character herself, and her name wasn't even Catherine Kelley.
No, I mean, it's certainly part of the novel is about people remaking themselves and becoming famous or infamous. I mean, that was part of the attraction, not only to be a bank robber and a kidnapper and a gangster in the 1930s, but to become a legend and to become a really like a folk hero. And Catherine Kelley was born in Saltillo, right around the turn of the century, and she was born Cleo Brooks, and she was born into a very poor family of sharecroppers, and she goes out to Texas and reinvents herself as Catherine, first Catherine Thorne, and then on the third husband, Catherine Kelley, and she becomes a very stylish, hip gangster moll.
And I know
new.
You kind of addressed the issue whether he was this tough gangster or a henpecked husband. Is she the mole behind the gangster here?
I think there's, without any doubt, Catherine Kelley ran George Kelley. And I think that's why a lot of people had not written about Machine Gun Kelley. When you think about the image of Machine Gun Kelley, you think about a guy with the chopper spraying bullets. You think about this tough guy. And really, George Kelley was a fairly nice guy. In fact, I interviewed a guy who had been robbed by Kelley. He was 102 years old, a guy named Homer Edgeworth. And I interviewed him shortly before his death. He was at a nursing home here right outside Jackson. I said, what was it like to have a gun next to your head by Machine Gun Kelley? And he said, he was a fairly nice guy about it. So he was dominated by his wife. His wife was extremely ambitious. She liked the lifestyle. She liked the money. She liked the jewelry. And it was her idea to kidnap one of the wealthiest men in America, this guy Charlie Urschel, in Oklahoma City back in 1933.
And that's where it all went awry, isn't it, with that kidnapping?
Well, the kidnapping worked out. I mean, there were problems with the kidnapping. They, again, this book is a gangster story, but it's really a comedy, and that's not the author's own interpretation. It really was a comedy. When they pulled off this major kidnapping, they ran out of gas. They lost their way to the safe house. Just everything that could go wrong went wrong. But they did pull off the kidnapping. They did get the ransom money, which was $200,000. They did a ransom drop in Kansas City. They got away with it. But what happened was the federal agents were able to track Catherine Kelley's mother as an accomplice and put her in jail. And when that happened, she went back to George and said, look, you got to spring my mom. And I think the lesson of this is never, go back and try to rescue your mother-in-law. I think that's really the trick is, your mother-in-law's in trouble. That's where it went awry is going to try to rescue the mother-in-law.
But another big mistake with this didn't they have to kidnap two men because they weren't sure which one was the real guy they wanted to go after?
When they went to the mansion in Oklahoma City to kidnap Charlie Urschel, he was playing bridge on his back porch. And he was playing with this man named Walter Jarrett. And they bust in, and here are these two men, roughly the same age. And Machine Gun Kelley's accomplice, Albert Bates, looks at him. He says, which one is Urschel? And Kelley looks at both of them and says, hell, I don't know. He said, we'll take both of them. And so it wasn't until they got to the county line and they could look at the men's driver's license did they know which one was Charlie Urschel. And they kicked Jared out and they took Urschel. So not a lot of great planning. I mean, he was not, George Kelley was a lot of good things and interesting things, but a great criminal mastermind was not one of them.
And this was during an era when gangsters were, John Dillinger was almost a movie star in how
Absolutely.
much everyone knew who he was. He was a killer, and so was Babyface Nelson. But Machine Gun Kelley never killed anyone, did he?
No, he never killed anybody. And again, I mean, the more research, I mean, I went through FBI records, 8,000 pages of these things. I mean, I did interviews, and I really tried to get this thing exactly as it occurred. And the story that I keep on coming back to George Kelley is, he didn't have the style and the panache of John Dillinger. He didn't have the notoriety of Bonnie and Clyde as far as the afterlife with the films and the movies. And he wasn't a sociopath like Babyface Nelson. He was a fairly normal guy. But through the name, through this kidnapping, through really being the first of the public enemies, he became public enemy number one. And when he was caught in Memphis in 1933, this was the kind of story that was on headlines across the world. This was a major, major story.
Your last book was in Devil's Garden, and it was about the trial of Fatty Arbuckle, huge star in the 1920s, whose career was ruined. Is this book, because it's about true facts like that one, is it fictionalized truth, or if you go into the library, is it in the nonfiction section or the fiction section?
I think my books are really hard to peg, and I think sometimes my publisher has a really hard time with that. Is it a crime book? Is it a historical book? Is it nonfiction? Is it fiction? What is it? And it's just hopefully just a really good story, and it is based heavily on truth. I will say, when you read Infamous and you're laughing at some of the mistakes that George Kelley made, and you see the tights that he's getting into, and you find out he goes down to Biloxi and he thinks he's evaded the law, and he's out on this corner in downtown Biloxi, and he sees a newsboy crying, "Machine Gun Kelley in town," and he has to run and escape he just can't escape himself. You'll think that this is stuff that I've put in there to make it a more interesting story, but so many of these details are just straight from the record and true fact. And it was a joy to write, and it was a funny story. And I was really pleased to be able to put a local boy, our own gangster, our own Southern gangster, Machine Gun Kelley, give him finally his own book.
It sounds fascinating. The book is called Infamous. The author, Ace Atkins. Thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Thank you.